How
Magic.
good was Steve Nash actually? I remember as a kid, the earliest Steve Nash memory I have is like vaguely. I remember him playing against the Lakers and he had a bloody nose. That's the earliest. It's so vague though.
Shot like
Lakers.
Curry and has more MVPs than Shaq and Kobe.
One of the most unselfish
How good
people.
was
It's
he?
never
Because when he
about
came to the
him.
Lakers,
He's revolutionized
holy
the way
shit,
a
he was
point guard
like
plays the
30.
game.
He's one of the best point guards we've ever had.
But did Steve Nash
No,
really
no, not
deserve
30. He
those
was like
MVPs? Was he
89.
really as good as his highlights?
What a pass. Oh, and a shot from Nash. Vintage Steve Nash.
This is the story
Is this
of
potato
Steve Nash.
quality or no? It's HD.
He was born in South Africa but raised in Canada, where he played soccer,
didn't know
basketball,
that.
and hockey. So the chances of
I
Steve
don't know. He was South African.
becoming a basketball player were virtually 0%. While his dad John played soccer professionally and his mom Jean played pro netball, they never forced Steve into sports, especially not basketball, which Steve first started playing at 12 years old. But even being the MVP of his youth soccer league, immediately after he picked up
That's why
basketball,
he has soccer
Steve was
skills,
hooked. I remember watching Steve from inside.
I also remember watching. Yo. I also remember Steve Nash doing the assist with the kick thing on a slam dunk. I forgot to who, but yeah.
At our house while he was shooting hundreds of free throws in the pouring rain. I never worked that hard, said his younger brother Martin, who was a pro soccer player.
Martin
Steve's
Nash.
fanatical love for the game made him a dominant force
Yeah,
in
he
high school.
probably got
And as a
bitches.
senior, he averaged 21
Nah,
points,
he
9
definitely got
rebounds,
girls.
and 11 assists, leading his school to a state title. But when he told his best friends that he wanted to play in the NBA, the only thing he got was laughter. And unfortunately,
Hate us.
all the college scouts felt the same. Nash's coach sent out over 30 scholarship applications to U.S. colleges, with highlight reels of Nash's brilliant passes and impeccable shooting. But all positives were trumped by prejudice, because
Trump?
Nash was a white point guard from Canada, and nobody believes that Canadians could play anything other than hockey. However, one college coach eventually did bite and made a trip to Canada to see Nash play. Immediately, Santa Clara coach Dick Davey fell in love with Nash's skills, even though
Yeah,
he
Nash-
also said that
he
Steve
definitely
was
got
the worst
girls, I ain't
defensive
gonna lie.
player he'd ever seen. And the coach's assessment of
definitely got
Nash
the
turned
huzz.
out to be spot on. Because as a freshman, Nash was a lights-out shooter, but he couldn't guard a chair. So Steve didn't get a lot of playing time.
Damn.
And he even contemplated quitting basketball to return to Canada. But thanks to his maniacal work ethic, Nash quickly improved. And as a freshman, he helped Santa Clara to produce the biggest upset of the 1993 NCAA tournament, after they beat the number 2 seeded Arizona. After his sophomore season, Nash played for the Canadian national team in the 1994 World Cup, reaching the biggest turning point of his career thanks to Del Harris. Harris was an experienced coach who won NBA Coach of the Year, but that summer he was working as an advisor to the Canadian Basketball Federation. After one practice, he approached Nash. Steve, you may not know it, but you are already an NBA player, and you have a chance to make a great career. For Nash, it was the biggest injection of self-confidence. So many people
Shithead.
told me, come on, when I told them I wanted to play in the NBA. But when somebody from the NBA finally says you can, it means a lot. It means everything. In his junior year, Nash averaged 21 points and 6 assists on 45%
Steve Nash
shooting
played
from
4
three,
years in
and
college?
was named Conference Player of the
Or
Year.
3?
He wanted to enter the 95 NBA draft, but in everybody's eyes, Nash was still a scrawny white Canadian point guard, and his NBA future was still not certain. And it wasn't until his senior year when Nash dominated against Georgia Tech and their star point guard Stephon
Oh, he had
Marbury that
4.
the whole world finally saw his NBA potential. The Suns liked Nash and viewed him as a great backup for Kevin Johnson. So, in the 96 draft, which would prove to be the
Look at that.
greatest draft
The
class of all
greatest
time,
draft ever.
Steve
You
Nash
saw
was
Kobe
drafted
Bryant?
with the 15th overall pick.
Hold on, let's
Greatest
look at
draft
Kobe Bryant. Kobe, Ray Allen, Steve Nash.
class of all time.
And then, yeah, my NBA knowledge IQ goes down from there.
Steve Nash was drafted with the 15th overall pick.
I'm hoping that I'm going to start a steady stream of players from Canada into the NBA.
But not everybody was happy with the Suns' draft choice. Phoenix fans booed Nash, feeling the management wasted a pick on a physically inferior point guard from a weak college. And at first,
It's 'cause
their
he's not
predictions
black.
seemed to be right. In Steve's rookie
Back
year,
then,
he
that
averaged
was
just
a
3 points in
intimidating bat-
garbage
intimidating
time
batch.
minutes. Then, when the Suns traded
I'm not
for
even
Jason
being
Kidd,
racist.
it looked like Nash's days in Phoenix were numbered. But then, Danny Ainge took over, and he wanted to pair Kidd with a great shooter.
I don't play because
Can I
I'm
do a
not
jumping
good,
jack?
I'm
No,
not
not
as good
yet.
as Kevin Johnson right now or Jason Kidd. I know I just have to keep improving.
Nash finally saw an increase in playing time, mostly as a shooting guard. He was running off screens and hitting, instantly proving himself as one of the best long-range shooters in the game. However, the joy was short-lived, because Suns management did not see starter potential in Nash. Phoenix sent Nash to the Mavericks. Nash's arrival
Phoenix
in Texas
Buns.
coincided with the arrival of Dirk Nowitzki, and the two of them instantly became best friends.
We both came to a new city. We both lived in the same apartment complex, and we hung out. You know, we didn't really know anyone else.
However, both of them struggled initially, and for 2 years in a row, the Mavs missed the playoffs. Nash's extreme unselfishness was a real problem for the Mavericks, and coach Don Nelson firmly believed that Nash's hesitancy was costing the Mavs wins.
And Steve
Nelson
Nash
knew
was a
that
shooter.
Nash could be
I don't know
one
what
of
he was
the
doing
NBA's
with
premier
that
shooters,
mustache
but
and
Steve
beard
was a
combo,
purist.
but
Ever since his soccer days, he always wanted to set up teammates, and Nelson couldn't convince Nash to look for his own shot. We had a situation where I demanded that he shoot at least 10 times a game. I threatened to fine him if he didn't. Nelson. Then, in 2001, Nash averaged more than 10 field goals per game, finishing the year with 15 points and 7 assists on average. Even more importantly, Dallas made the playoffs for the first time in 11 years, but they would lose to the Spurs in the second round. Over the next 3 years in Dallas, Nash and Nowitzki's two-man game became unstoppable for opposing defenses. Together with Michael Finley, the final piece of their big three, Dallas had the best
Michael
offense in the NBA for 3 straight seasons. But
I just
in
said
the
that like I know
playoffs,
who he is,
something was
but yeah.
always missing. Poor defense, lack of rebounding, a bit of bad luck, and they would always lose before reaching the finals. After his 6th year in Texas, Nash hoped to agree to a long-term contract with Mark Cuban, but that didn't happen because
Money man
Cuban
Mark
didn't want to pay big money to a 30-year-old point guard with a bad back. So Nash returned to Phoenix, where he would team up
He
with
was
the coach
30?
who gave him all the freedom to showcase his genius. Mike D'Antoni was an offensive mastermind, and he was the first NBA coach to implement a spread pick-and-roll offense. This involved playing with 4 great three-point shooters on the floor, which is normal now,
Mike
but
D'Antoni fucked
revolutionary
up the Lakers,
20
man.
years ago. The Suns played the most beautiful basketball in
Eh?
the NBA, with constant movement, dribble handoffs, and lots of shooting. Because they pushed the pace and shot the ball with a lot of time left on the shot clock, they got nicknamed 7 seconds or less Suns.
We played a style that was thought to be revolutionary at the time, but
I
really
low-key wish
we should have
I
doubled
can watch Steve Nash's prime, or like these players that I grew up watching. I could watch their prime and understand.
down. And Mike said this before, we should have played faster, we should have played smaller, we should have shot way more threes.
And while D'Antoni was the mastermind behind this, it was all made possible because of Nash. Nash had 4 attributes that made him the ideal spread pick-and-roll conductor: great shooting, playmaking, decision-making, and finishing. Not to mention that in the history of the NBA, there wasn't a player who had a better one-handed pass than Nash. Most of his passes were one-handed, with either hand. And
I
what made
remember
these
playing
passes
a
special
2K
is the fact
back
that
in the
he threw
day.
them directly from the hip.
I don't know if it was
without
2K or
changing
NBA
the position
Live,
of his
but
body
I
and
remember
the height of the dribble, so
Stoudemire.
the defense didn't have a fraction of a second to
man.
react. But that wasn't the only thing that made
He was
Nash
OP.
special. Thanks to his dexterity and footwork that were groomed by years of soccer and jump roping, it was also impossible to knock Nash off balance. There was a legendary story that Nash was able to keep balance while standing on a Pilates ball and simultaneously jump rope like prime Muhammad Ali. Steve would excel in any sport that requires hand-eye coordination. Apart from that, I don't think I've seen a basketball player with better balance in my life. D'Antoni. Because of all these attributes and great court
How long was my mic fucked up for? Holy shit.
vision, Nash became a master of dribble penetration, something he did better than any other point guard in NBA history.
So why do we care about some white guy? This is Steve Nash.
Nash was a pioneer of dribble probing, where
was
he would
good
keep
as
his dribble alive in the paint and not immediately
he's a
take the
goat.
shot like other point guards. Nash would often maintain his dribble in the paint to extend the period
was a
in which he
goat
commanded the
assister.
opponent's attention,
Is
which
that
created more opportunities for
what's his
teammates
name?
to spring
Fuck.
free.
Gortat.
The move became known as Nashing, and it's a legacy of Nash that is now commonly used by players like Steph Curry or Chris Paul. From 2004 to 2010, Phoenix
He's a
finished
trendsetter.
top 2 in the league in offensive rating every season, and Nash led the the NBA in assists 5 times. But what was even more impressive than his passing was how insanely efficient Nash was.
Oh, yeah,
Between
his free
2006
throws, I
and
remember he
2010, Nash
didn't
had
miss.
4 seasons with 50, 40, 90 shooting splits, not including the 2007 season where he shot 89.9% from the free throw line, meaning that he needed just one more made free throw to make the 50, 40, 90 club again. Only 10 players in NBA history shot 50, 40, 90 for the season, but
fucking
KD
disgusting.
and Bird are the only players to do it 2 times, while Nash had 4 such seasons. With such phenomenal efficiency, it's a shame that Nash was always so focused about setting up teammates and didn't take more shots.
I was too conservative shooting the ball. Like, I should have walked into way more threes. I should have looked for more threes.
Steve never
Damn.
averaged 20 points per game, which is what probably hurt him and the Suns in the playoffs. In 2005, Phoenix made the conference finals against the Spurs. Stoudemire averaged 37 and 10 in the series, and Nash had 23 plus 10 assists. But Tim Duncan and the Spurs were simply too good on their way to an NBA championship. In 2006, the Suns lost Stoudemire because of a knee injury, and nobody expected them to go far. But Nash led them past Kobe
this is
and the
what I
Lakers, and then the
vaguely
Clippers
remember.
to reach another conference finals. But they would only lose again.
Well,
this time
actually, I
to
don't know,
Nash's best
but I just
friend,
remember him
Dirk.
bleeding.
In 2007, Amari returned to All-Star form, and this was the Suns' best chance to win it all. After they defeated Kobe again, they met their biggest nemesis, the Spurs, in an extremely tough series
would
filled
get-
with cheap fouls, elbows to the
Ooh.
face, and controversy. Late in Game 4, Spurs' Robert Horry knocked Nash into the scorer's table at midcourt
Oh,
and was charged
hell
with a
no.
flagrant foul and ejected. The Suns won 104-98, tying the series at 2-2. Nash played phenomenally and finished the game with
Yeah,
24
that broken
points and
nose, I
15
remember that
assists. The day
vaguely.
after the game, the NBA announced that Horry would be suspended for 2 games for the
I
flagrant
was
foul
6
against
years
Nash.
old.
But what they also said shocked the Suns and the entire world. Because they left the bench after Horry's foul on Nash, Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw were also suspended 1
Oh,
game
they
each.
scammed.
So, for the lesser offense, the Suns lost 2 players and the Spurs lost 1.
What was unfortunate about both of them is that I think that Amari and Boris were more interested in coming to me
That's what I mean.
than
Yeah.
instigating, right?
San Antonio won Game 5 in Phoenix 88-85, and then won Game 6 at home to clinch the series.
Man, what a terrible blow. Terrible
Rewatching
blow.
it.
The following year, Phoenix acquired an aging Shaquille O'Neal as a last-ditch
No.
effort to battle with Duncan,
Shaq,
and all
he
this
was
countermeasure
50.
did was a gentleman's sweep in the first round versus the Spurs. In 2010, the Suns made another conference finals, but by then they were too old, and Nash retired without ever even making the finals, let alone a championship. I should have
No,
made
and then
Steve
I
shoot
bought
more,
that
D'Antoni
number
said years
10
later.
jersey.
I told Steve Nash, and you should have shot more threes. I should have made you shoot more threes.
D'Antoni was absolutely right, and Nash's career could have been even better if he played in the modern NBA.
He would have
with a
been
ton
Steph
of
Curry,
three-point
basically.
shooting. Nash is the second greatest free throw shooter ever at 90.4%, behind only Steph Curry at 90.8%. Behind the arc, Nash shot 42.8%, which is the 11th best mark ever, ahead of Steph, who was number 12. And at 49%
Damn, he
from the
shot better
field,
than
Steve
Steph?
is one of the rare point guards to ever shoot close to 50%, and he's
But
come
Steph
closest to shooting
shoots more,
50,
that's why.
40, 90 for his entire career. Shaq could have won the MVP in 2005, and Kobe's 35 points per game could have won him the MVP in 2006. But Steve absolutely deserved to win because he was the best shooter and the
I
best
remember this was
passer
like
in the game
a-
simultaneously, something that no other player achieved.
Kobe should have won 2007, like 100%, and they gave it to Steve Nash. I like remember that too.